Well, let's get you set for week 5 of the Big 12 football season. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. We cover the Big 12. We appreciate you being here, as always, as a part of the show. And if you could, hit that thumbs up, subscribe. We appreciate you doing that. Leave that 5-star rating and review. And now we are getting into the thick of conference play in this conference. And we have a great weekend that we are going to talk about here with you in the Big 12. So, here's the deal. We're going to do this show a little bit differently. A lot of you wanted more of a full preview of the upcoming weekend in the Big 12. So I'm going to give you the top storylines that I'm watching in the Big 12 for week 5, and I will run down every game, and then I'll give you picks against the spread towards the end of the show. Sound good? We all on the same page? All right, let's do it. So my number one storyline I'm watching here in the Big 12 this weekend is Kansas State versus Oklahoma State, and that game effectively being an elimination game in the Big 12 title race. It might be too early to some of you to say that, but I really don't think it is. Now, this is more of a must-win for Kansas State than it is for Oklahoma State, and I'll explain why. Oklahoma State lost to Utah. I think Utah's going to be there at the end. So I don't think we end up in a situation where Utah and Oklahoma State are vying for the second spot. Kansas State's lost to BYU. Maybe BYU's for real. Maybe they're not. But that one could hurt them more in tiebreakers than Oklahoma State's loss to Utah. So for that reason, this game is a bigger deal for Kansas State, because if Kansas State falls to 0-2 in Big 12 play, with these two losses, BYU and Oklahoma State, then forget it. I think they're basically out of the picture moving forward for the Wildcats. Whereas Oklahoma State, not that they can afford an 0-2 start, but if you have losses to Utah on the resume and then also Kansas State, those are better losses, especially the Utah loss, if you think they're going to be there at the end. But this is a game now between Chris Kleiman and Mike Gundy that has just all the makings of a classic old school Big 12 game, 11 a.m. kickoff in Manhattan, and I can't wait for it. So that is, like, to me, the game of the week to watch. And there are some great games in the Big 12. I'll get to more of them here coming up. But because of the old school Big 12 mentality, listen, in the new Big 12, half the teams have only been here for a hot minute. So for those of us who are more like, hey, this is old school Big 12 football, this is it, and there's a lot on the line between these two teams still ranked in the top 25. The other big storyline I'm watching here in the Big 12, BYU. Are the Cougars for real? BYU is 4-0, but there's a lot of people still not buying it. And by the way, I'm not convinced I'm buying it either. I had them second in my power rankings this past week because I can't deny what they've done. The TCU win looks better, the SMU win looks better after SMU blew out TCU last week. And, they demolished Kansas State. Now, it was also just an awful game for the Wildcats, some bad luck in there. The final score doesn't do the game itself justice, but 38-9 is still 38-9. But the question is BYU for real? If they go on the road against a desperate Baylor team and they win this game on Saturday at 5-0, the answer will have to be yes. But there's a reason that Baylor is a 3-point favorite in this game. That's right. Baylor's a 3-point favorite in this game on Saturday. And I will have a pick for you in this game coming up later in the show. The other big storyline, big noon kickoff, is going to be in Orlando. It'll be there for UCF and Colorado. Now, let's just be honest. If Colorado doesn't win on a Hail Mary, big noon kickoff is not win on a Hail Mary, but have the Hail Mary, go to overtime, win the game. If that doesn't happen in the Colorado-Baylor game, big noon kickoff probably is not in Orlando. They are following Dion. They are following Colorado. But if you're a UCF fan, don't be upset about that. You're the home team. It creates an enormous opportunity for you recruiting-wise and then on the field as well, because a lot of eyeballs follow Colorado. And this is a kind of game where Gus Malzahn can light up in a state right now that is not playing great college football. I'm looking at you in Tallahassee. I'm looking at you in Gainesville. Gus Malzahn can help establish his program as a premier college football program in the state of Florida on Saturday against Colorado. That's how big this game can be for the Knights. Now, on the other side, Colorado is 1-0 in the Big 12 and 3-1 overall. So, if Colorado wins this game, suddenly you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, okay, are the Buffaloes actually going to be in contention? I mean, are we talking about a Colorado team that is in the mix potentially in the second half of the season, which I would not have predicted? Now, I will give you a pick on this game as well as the show progresses, but UCF's a team that I thought and predicted before the season would be in the Big 12 championship game against Utah. That was my Big 12 title game preseason prediction. I'm standing by it, but suddenly Colorado becomes a very interesting team, at least for a week. So we'll be following that as well. And obviously having big noon kickoff at a Big 12 game after being there in week 1 for the Penn State-West Virginia game is pretty cool. TCU at Kansas. Which one of these teams is going to be in full-blown unravel mode? If Kansas loses, they're 0-2 in the Big 12. They're 1-4 overall. If TCU loses, they are 0-2 in the Big 12. They are 2-3 on the season. And either way, the loser of this game, the losing fan base of this game is going to be absolutely crushed. And they're going to think their season is over, and they're probably going to be right. TCU is coming off the worst loss of Sonny Dykes' career outside of the national championship blowout against Georgia, although that was more respectable, I would say, than what happened against SMU. Everything from on the field to off the field was an embarrassment for the Horned Frogs. There's no way around that. Can they bounce back at Arrowhead Stadium on Saturday? Where, yes, KU is playing a handful of its home games. And by the way, Lance Leipold and KU, they're basically begging the fans to show up. Now, TCU is not going to take over Arrowhead Stadium. It's just the numbers aren't there for TCU to take over Arrowhead Stadium. But you look at that game and you say to yourself, what if it's just empty? What if the upper bowl is just empty? KU thought they were coming into this year. They're renovating their home stadium at Memorial, and they figured, hey, a lot of hype. We could fill up Arrowhead Stadium with KU fans. This is going to be awesome. This will be a special experience. And if they lose this game, they'll be 1-4. KU fans will go to October, and they'll be counting down the basketball season. Now, I don't want that for KU. I don't want that for the Big 12. Jalen Daniels can still be one of the most exciting players in the conference. But if they lose this game, it is going to be very, very ugly in Lawrence. Now, no one's on the hot seat or anything like that, but the season is going to start to feel like a lost cause at 1-4 and 0-2 in the Big 12, and same thing for TCU. And then my other big storyline I'm watching here is the surprise game of the weekend, and that is Cincinnati and Texas Tech, two teams that are 3-1 and 1-0 in the Big 12. And the winner of that game between Cincinnati and TCU is going to feel like, why not us? Why can't we be the dark horse that nobody is talking about? Why can't we be the team that nobody sees sneaking up on the rest of the Big 12? And by the way, the winner of this game should feel that way at 4-1 and 2-0 in the Big 12. I predicted before the season, and you can go back and watch this, that Texas Tech would be a surprising 6-1 potentially, or 7-1 potentially. Not because I thought Texas Tech was going to win the Big 12, but their schedule was easy on the front end, relatively speaking. They beat Arizona State last week. They've got Cincinnati this week. Then it's at Arizona, which, by the way, Arizona is looking worse than what we thought they were going to be. Then it's Baylor, and then it's at TCU. They could go into the month of November with a 7-1 record, Texas Tech. I'm not predicting it. I don't think they're going to win all those games, but it's not impossible to have that conversation, especially if they get over the hump this weekend against Cincinnati at home. And then if you look at Cincinnati, you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, okay, they don't play a ranked team, at least a currently ranked team, until November 16th. Texas Tech this weekend, at UCF after a bye week. That's tough. Arizona State, Colorado, West Virginia. That's a tougher slate than what Tech has. But still, if you're Cincinnati, you're like, hey, what if things start coming together for us? And that's exactly how the winner of this game is going to feel. And that's how the winner of this game should feel, by the way, between Cincinnati and Texas Tech. So it is shaping up to be the last weekend of September, and there are so many storylines to look at. Those are my top 5, but I'll give you more. I haven't yet touched on the Arizona at Utah game. You know, Arizona's off the bye. Utah's coming home after beating Oklahoma State in Stillwater. I would feel better for Arizona if this game was at home for them. Of course, it's not. They've got to go on the road. And I feel awful about this game for Arizona as a result. I know you might think there's a hangover here potentially for Utah, but I'm not buying it. First off, there are a lot of issues with Arizona, most notably on the defensive side right now, but they're still piecing together some things on offense, especially on the line. That shapes up very well for Utah in this game. And then it's not like Utah overlooks Arizona. They know each other from the Pac-12. So there's no way that's going to happen with Kyle Whittingham. So this is one of those games that could get a bit ugly late on Saturday night in Salt Lake City. And then you've got the Iowa State-Houston game. The most interesting part of this game right now is basically Matt Campbell breaking the Iowa State wins record, which he will do with a victory over the Cougars. And when that happens, first off, credit to him, but it's also one of those things that you look at and you say to yourself, well, Matt Campbell stuck around long enough to make this happen. How much longer does he want to do this? And I'm done asking that question because every time it comes up, Matt Campbell proves he's not going anywhere. I don't know at this point what would draw Matt Campbell away from Ames. And by the way, Iowa State, obviously, and the Big 12 as a whole is better for it. Because if Iowa State, which is also not getting enough love, I'm not predicting them to win the Big 12, but Iowa State is a big favorite over Houston. They're 16-point favorites on the road. Now, the road's a tough spot, but Houston does not have a good home field environment. I mean, they are just struggling when it comes to getting fan enthusiasm for this team, and it's partially just, the team stinks. There's a lot going on in Houston. It's not a college town. It's not Manhattan. It's not Ames, right? So if Iowa State does get this win, you look at this Iowa State schedule, and they're not playing a ranked team until November 23rd at Utah. Once again, at least based on where the rankings are right now. They've got Baylor next week. Then there is a bit of a tough stretch here for the Cyclones at West Virginia versus UCF versus Texas Tech. So that's a tricky 3-game stretch. But all in all, you look at this game and you say to yourself, Iowa State's projected to win big. I believe they will. Houston's a bad football team. And the Cyclones are going to keep marching along. Could be in the top 15 coming up on Monday when the polls come out. So there is a lot to look at this game and at least be mildly intrigued by, but it is, of these games of the Big 12 this weekend, the least interesting, and that's just because it has the biggest spread. Iowa State's a very large favorite, and that's what you would expect. I'm Pete Mundo. We are Heartland College Sports. Thank you for being here and joining us as a part of the show, and we always appreciate you doing that as we roll through another show here. So I do want to spend a few minutes here. Let me get some of your comments. How about that? And then I'll get to my picks. We all good with that plan? Jeremy writes, Ollie Gordon continues his trend and actually rushes for negative yardage this weekend. That's your prediction, Jeremy. Listen, Ollie Gordon's been a bust. Now, the offensive line's not helping him, but Ollie Gordon has been a bust, and that's why I like Kansas State this weekend. I'm giving away one of my picks. I'll get to why, but I like Kansas State this weekend. Oklahoma State's offense is horrendous. They have one of the worst yard per plays in the country. So while the defense has been good, I agree. That has been a huge disappointment. Pete, if Oklahoma State loses, I want to play for the future. Let's get rolling on the next quarterback. No. Here's the thing. You can't do that now in the NIL world. The next quarterback for Oklahoma State might not be on the team. In the NIL world, these guys are getting paid. There's no like, hey, this is a developmental year all of a sudden, especially when Mike Gundy's teams get better as the years progress. They always do that. So if you're 0-2, you still have a chance to get to a Big 12 title game. I'm not going to say it's likely, but the Big 12 is going to be chaotic. You still have a chance. You probably got to win out, but you still have a chance. So I'm not playing for the future because in this world of transfer portals, NIL, no one even knows what the future is. Eric writes, as a BYU fan, playing at Baylor makes me nervous. Baylor should have won at Colorado. They're going to be pissed. They're going to be fired up heading back home. Eric, you have every right to feel the way you do. You should feel that way. And I will explain further in my picks as well. That's what I will do. All right. How about this comment? Somebody please beat Utah. Okay. Well, I don't think it's happening this weekend. So I could be wrong, but I don't think it's going to be Arizona beating Utah this weekend. I'm Pete Mundo on Heartland College Sports. Thank you for being here. We appreciate that. Let me give you now my 3 picks against the spread for the weekend. I give you an underdog, I give you a lock, and I give you a bad bet, meaning a bet I would not make. I'm going to bet the other side of that bad bet. I was 0-3 last week. Baylor totally screwed me at the end. My other 2 picks were just not good, but Baylor's the one that really stings. So I'm going to give you my underdog pick first. My underdog for week 5 in the Big 12 Conference is Colorado plus 14.5 at UCF. In large part, it's because of UCF's style of play. UCF is going to want to run the ball. And by the way, Colorado's run defense has actually been halfway decent. I'm not going to say it's been stout, but it has been halfway decent when you actually look at some of the numbers and how they've been playing the last couple of weeks. So that side of the ball, at least when it comes to the run defense, is not as concerning to me. The pass defense is more concerning to me in many respects for Colorado than the run defense right now. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying UCF wants to win this game on the ground. That is also just not a recipe for blowing a team out. And I think that Colorado can keep up with UCF. Listen, Shedeur Sanders is going to be drafted highly next spring. And UCF's weakness right now is in its secondary. UCF is right now 12th out of 16 teams in the Big 12 in passing yards allowed per game. They're 11th in defensive passing efficiency in the Big 12. Colorado wants to whip it around. They can keep themselves offensively in this game. I think they'll get worn down late, but at 14.5 points, I'm going to take Colorado plus the points. Now, the wise guys, I admit, are not with me on this. There's a lot of money that went quickly into UCF. It opened up at UCF minus 11, and after that, it moved to UCF minus 14 to 14.5. I'm taking the 14.5. Maybe it's a sucker bet to some of you, but I don't care. I'm taking it. That's too many points in this game. UCF is going to be, or I don't think Colorado is necessarily going to be hung over because they got the big noon kickoff, and UCF has to deal with all the pageantry around the big noon kickoff, and they've been told by their fans for the last 2 weeks because they had a bye week that they're awesome. And they were awesome in the second half against TCU. They weren't awesome in the first half. So let's not overstate that either. Colorado plus 14 is my underdog pick of the week in the Big 12. Now, next up, I'll give you my bad bet of the week. Oklahoma State plus 5 is a bad bet. I am going to go with Kansas State minus the 5 in this game against Oklahoma State. Now, first off, and I mentioned some of this earlier, but Oklahoma State's offense is a mess. Their yards per play is down near the bottom in the country. Ollie Gordon hasn't rushed for over 50 yards since the opener. The offensive line can't block for him. And going up against Kansas State, that's going to be a problem. It is. I mean, we know what Kansas State does well. They play the run well. They're third best against the run right now in the Big 12. Oklahoma State is third worst in rushing offense in the Big 12. That means Alan Bowman on the road's got to win you a game passing the ball. The guy was benched last week against Utah. Now, Kansas State has been more vulnerable against the pass, but still, it's not like Oklahoma State is lighting things up exactly. They're not. Kansas State playing at home, pissed off, coming off of that loss at BYU, knowing that loss was not as bad as the final score. Kansas State's going to be focused. They're at home in this game, and I like them to win and cover the 5-point spread for the Wildcats. And I will give you this little tidbit. If you're a bettor and you like things like this, Chris Kleiman is 18-8 against the spread as a home favorite. 18-8 against the spread as a home favorite. Sign me up for that. I will take those odds, especially coming into this game with what Kansas State is coming off of. There you go. On the bad bet is Oklahoma State +5. That means I'm on Kansas State -5 in that game. And now for my lock of the week. My lock of the week is going to be Baylor -3 against BYU. Baylor's coming off this game where they should have beaten Colorado. They lose because of a Hail Mary. That has stung this team all week long, that they should have won that game. Now they find themselves in this situation where they're going home, they're ticked off, and they're taking on a BYU team that is feeling itself. BYU's 4-0. Nobody predicted that before the season. Who would have ever seen that coming, right? Well, here they are. Are they getting a little too much love? Are they getting a little too big for themselves? We'll find out on Saturday, but I'm betting that they are. I think that this BYU team is good, but going on the road and winning in the Big 12 is a completely different animal. And let's be honest, last week's win was impressive, but it was not as impressive as the final score would indicate. So BYU also is a team that loves to win and win at home. They're just different on the road. And we wrote about this at Heartland College Sports. It came from Reddit. BYU is 28-3 in night games since 2019. They are 9-14 in day games, including 10 straight daytime losses against FBS opponents. Now they go to Baylor, who's pissed off, and Dave Aranda may be coaching for his job. I'm taking Baylor minus the points here. And by the way, the big money is on that number as well. So 80% of the tickets are betting BYU +3, but the line hasn't changed. It opened up at Baylor -3. It has not moved off of Baylor -3. That means those 20% of tickets are holding the line at -3. Those are the big bets coming in on Baylor minus the 3 points. So sign me up for that. My lock of the week is Baylor -3. My bad bet is Oklahoma State +5, meaning I'm on K-State -5. And my underdog is Colorado +14.5 at UCF. There you go. Let's get some wins this week. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. Thank you for being here, for joining us. Subscribe if you have not done that yet. We appreciate you doing that. There are thousands of you watching the show who have not yet done it. Hit that button, whether it's on iTunes, Spotify, or on YouTube, and drop us that 5-star rating and review and a comment. Enjoy the games. We're back on Sunday for our reaction show, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day, and go Big 12.